To the war in Ukraine now, and at a meeting of defence ministers, NATO Secretary-General says allies are talking about how to increase support for Ukraine. Jens Stoltenberg says Kyiv is using up ammunition faster than it's being provided and has called on member countries to increase production. The Kremlin says NATO demonstrated its hostility towards Russia every day and was becoming more and more involved in the conflict in Ukraine. Here's Jens Stoltenberg's opening remarks at that meeting.
NATO allies are providing unprecedented support to Ukraine to help uphold its right of self-defense. And from the start, we have been working very closely with the European Union, determined to support Ukraine for as long as it takes. Today, we will discuss our continued support, which is essential to help Ukraine prevail as an independent, sovereign state.
Well, as Ukraine continues the fight against Russian offensives, the Kremlin continues to wage another war against the critics at home. Draconian laws have been passed to punish dissent. Public criticism of President Putin's so-called special military operation carries the risk of a long prison sentence. Our Russia editor Steve Rosenberg travelled to the northern city of Arkhangelsk just to see how Russia is silencing opposition to this war.
20-year-old student Olesya Krivtsova has been missing a lot of classes lately. She's under house arrest, her every move monitored by this electronic tag. For social media posts critical of the war in Ukraine, Olesya faces up to 10 years in prison. She's been charged with discrediting the Russian army and justifying terrorism.
I never imagined you could get such a long prison sentence for posting on the internet. I've already been added to the official list of terrorists, the list that includes school shooters and groups like Islamic State. It's crazy.
Her Putin spider tattoo declares, "Big Brother is watching you." It turns out that Olesya's fellow students were watching her posts closely. Just before her arrest, Olesya had discovered this online chat. In it, students, some she knew, were discussing denouncing her to the authorities for her anti-war stance.
Some of them wanted to tell the security services or the police. Others were saying it's better just to discredit me. In the end, they decided that it was their duty as patriots to denounce me.
The only time Olesya is allowed out is to be in court. Her fashion statement, her protest against young Russians being punished for criticizing the authorities. The judge ruled to keep her under house arrest. From the Russian people, the Russian authorities expect total, unflinching support for the offensive in Ukraine. If you don't support it, you're expected at the very least to stay silent. If you don't stay silent, well, there's a whole string of repressive laws now in Russia for punishing dissent. This opposition politician was convicted of spreading fake news about the army. Ilya Yashin was sent to prison for 8.5 years. For Vladimir Kara-Murza, the charge is treason. The Kremlin critic and anti-war activist faces 20 years in jail. On the streets of Arkhangelsk, it's not Big Brother watching you. He's a Russian soldier who was killed fighting in Ukraine. The patriotic messaging is persuasive. We found little sympathy here for people with anti-war views who are being prosecuted. Those people who are discrediting our army or spreading fakes, they're sick in the head, Konstantin says. They should be sent off to the front line as cannon fodder. As for Olesya, she says she dreams of a Russia that embraces freedom of speech, where Russians are not seen as criminals just for having a different opinion. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, Arkhangelsk.